Hi, it's Anne from Unity Physiotherapy and Wellbeing. So, if you live with persistent pain, fibromyalgia, ME/CFS, POTS, and other long-term condition, you have probably heard the term flare-up. So, for example, flare-up of persistent pain or flare-up of fibromyalgia. It's a really widely used term. Some people like it and some don't. I don't particularly like it. You may do or you may not. If somebody is using the term and it's helpful for them, I use it. Or if I'm writing something and I know it's going to be recognised more widely and there's not really an alternative to it, then I will also use it then. So a flare-up essentially means an increase in symptoms. It's where the volume dial, for example, is turned up on persistent pain. So the volume of pain is turned up. It's where symptoms are more impactful, day-to-day function is harder. There is more activation in various systems because there's increased threat. Systems are on higher alert. There is more nervous system dysregulation than normal. So by that I mean autonomic nervous system dysregulation, and there's always a level of that with persistent pain, long COVID, POTS, etc. But that level of dysregulation increases. So dysregulating more easily, too much, taking longer to come back to regulations, not as efficient at coming back to the regulated state, regulated place. And this means that we need practices, strategies, resources for managing on a day-to-day basis, and we need practices or strategies, resources for managing when the volume dial on the symptoms is turned up, when day-to-day function is harder. And this is a big part of my work, is exploring with people what feels right for them, what feels helpful for them by connecting to their body, what is supportive for them on a day-to-day basis. And by practicing various resources and strategies more regularly, people over time create a way of being that is supportive of health and well-being, supportive of wellness, effective function and thriving, and supportive of managing and changing things like persistent pain. And we all need to create a way of being that is supportive of health and wellness, of effective function and thriving. It's more important when living with a long-term condition. And then when the volume dial is turned up on symptoms, when there's a flare-up, then we need more practices, resources, strategies and awareness to help us manage, to help us function during that time when the volume dial's louder, to also help us settle things back down and work back to previous level of function and potentially then build on that. And these practices and resources and strategies can be so many different things. It can be unhooking from tricky thoughts and feelings. It can be bringing in the compassionate self or doing a mini self-compassion practice. It's a slight difference between doing a self-compassion practice and connecting to the compassionate self, and of course they can go together, but I'm not going to go into that. There can be mindful movement, it can be mindfulness or mindfulness based practices, it could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be breath practices, it could be time in nature, it could be having more rest, and rest looks like so many different things, and there are different types of rest. It could be taking breaks more frequently in activities, changing activities more regularly to doing a physical one and then more of a cognitive one. There are so many different things that resources and practices, strategies look like, and then it can be individualized for each person. And over time, our kind of pool of resources, if you like, grows. So we might start with a small area of water, maybe a little puddle. And then that puddle gets bigger, the puddles that children go and jump in that they think are great because they're going to be, how deep are they going to be when they splash in them? And then it maybe becomes a lake and perhaps it's some sort of ocean that we can really kind of know is always there. We can draw on lots of different flows. We can weave the flows together. There isn't a set way of doing things. It's always changing, it's fluid, and the more we practice and the more we do things, the more we can kind of notice what flow is most relevant for us at the time. So that is a really big part of my work, helping people explore what is helpful for them, what do they relate to, what supports their body, what helps them regulate their nervous system, what helps them unhook from tricky thoughts and feelings. So when symptoms flare, when the pain volume, for example, is turned up, there's commonly more self-criticism, more anxiety, decreased trust in the body. That goes down even more when things sort of flare up. And I'll give you an example from my own life. So I had a virus recently, and that really stimulated the POTS. I had a flare up, which I hadn't had one like that for a while, other than a reaction to a supplement, and that wasn't a true POTS flare up. So I had to have 2 days of sitting with my feet up. I could not function very well at all. I was tachycardic, I was short of breath, I had brain fog. So that was this kind of level of these symptoms that meant that daily function was really hard. Then I had thoughts. I started to hook into some worry loops. And I kind of could see this level of threat increasing, and I am able to down modulate that. So I could unhook from the trickier thoughts, the worry-based loop that I was starting to go into. There's this kind of body thought loop that was happening, that was reinforcing itself. And I could reframe it to the fact that everything was okay, simply needed more rest right now. And I had lots of skills and knowledge and practice to settle things back down again, that things would be okay. There is always a way through. And I could then focus on doing what was supportive. So having that more rest, taking it as an opportunity to rest, to bring in more practices, and when the brain fog settled down, to do some other bits that I could do while I was sat with my feet up, more kind of admin-based stuff. Because I had essentially another 2 days on top of that where I had to go really steady, and then something that I'm still kind of being mindful of coming out of the flare that and the virus, that things are potentially a little bit more easily stimulated still, so I'm working back towards where I was before. And it's hard to tell whether there was a flare up of the ME/CFS because I had a virus and because of some of the POTS symptoms, but either way symptoms were louder, and you could watch that dysregulation increasing, and I needed to break that cycle. And I have lots of knowledge, practices, resources that helped me to do that. And that is what I help people to do. Because what that would then have done, had I not have been able to do that, to unhook from the worry, to connect to trust in the body and safety in the body, and break that loop, is that would have dysregulated things more, and the symptoms would have been worse. And one of the reasons that I was mentioning that was also because of trust. Trust in the body is really important, trust in the self in general, actually. And commonly when living with any of these conditions that I've mentioned is that trust decreases, and sometimes to really such a low level. And we can build that up to a much stronger level, to have a really strong core of inner trust. And then when the volume dial on symptoms is turned up, threat is increased, and that trust is wobbled. And that happened to me. It did wobble the trust in my body. That core is so strong, I could see and feel this wobble of trust. And I could connect to the inner core of trust and hold that and know that it was okay. And I didn't then have to work to build trust back up afterwards, because that inner trust is there and strong. And that's another thing that I help people do, to get to that level of trust where it can be wobbled. It's a bit of an unshakable trust is what I call it for myself. It's not that it's not shakeable, because it is wobbleable, but it doesn't shake that core. That core is there, and that's really important, and that's things that I explore with people. So I really wanted to do this video to highlight the importance of day-to-day strategy, practices, resources that are helpful, that become a way of being over time, and that is obviously adaptable. We change that all the time. And then we have the resources, practices, and strategies that help us manage when symptoms are louder, more impactful, help us settle things back down and help us return to previous level of function and potentially build on that. And I can help you do that if you need help with it. So hopefully this was helpful. Please remember the importance of having that pool of resources, that pool of practices to draw on, and that expands over time, and there isn't a right or wrong way to use things, and that we flow them together and they weave together to create wonderful supportive things. I hope this was helpful, and do get in touch if you would like to. I offer a free 15-minute discovery call so we can see how I could help you. So do get in touch if that's helpful for you to do.